my coach taught me something. He shared with me that Siddharth, don't work in your school, work on your school.
Let's say there's a school in Dehradun,
Mhm.
and if everyone's saying that's the number one school, the number one
Yeah.
school, right?
Yeah.
Now, if I live in Pune, I can't send my kid there.
Correct.
Does that mean my kid is going to be devoid of that experience of being in a great school?
Whether you're a first generation, second generation school management, working on yourself, knowing the best in education, reading about education, without that, you're doing disservice to the kids.
Welcome to Will Talks, everybody. Today I have a brilliant, absolutely brilliant speaker and a school leader for many of you who probably know. We have Siddharth Rajgarhia, who is the chief learner of DPS Varanasi, DPS at Lava Nagpur, at Hinjewadi in Pune, and at Nashik. So today's conversation is going to be brilliant. I've been looking forward for it for a long time. It's going to be a freewheeling conversation talking about perhaps parenting, perhaps meditation, perhaps spirituality, talk about how schools work, how it feels to be a second generation school leader, so many things, or maybe none of the above. How are you doing, Siddharth? Anything
I'm
you'd like to
doing
tell?
very well, Willie. Thank you. And it's an absolute honor to be on Will Talks. I've seen many of the Will Talks that you've done with various people and have learned from them. So it's an absolute pleasure to be on this.
It's so cool. I love the way you call it a chief learner, right? I mean, for all the different options that you had to put your title, what 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 gave you that idea to call yourself a chief learner? When did that happen?
So during the pandemic, I think all of us in various schools figured that, as school leaders, as people running schools, we need to be learning. School as an organization needs to be a learning organization. And I was thinking to myself, what can I do so that I pass that message on bold and clear? And I think that was one shift that happened. And I had also met somebody. I think it was Sultan I'd met, and he also called himself chief learner. So I took inspiration from him as well. So those were some shifts. And recently I'm reading this very interesting book called The Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge. And it is so powerful when an organization is learning together. That is exactly what I wanted to do when I moved my title from director to chief learner, is that how as a group of people we build that shared understanding and shared vision for the school.
One of the things that people say, "Arey, wo cycle chalate gir gaya," or when you look at a car and it's banged up from all sides, they say, "Seekh raha hai, learner hai,"
Yeah.
right? So, are there any mistakes you probably made that come to your mind now? Because one of the evidences and signals for our people who we work with to show that we are learning is also we are making mistakes,
Yeah.
but learning from it and growing. All of us are going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
It's the way we process that is what that's the kind of feeling I get. So how do you I'm just thinking, do you have any incidents or anything that comes to your mind that these are some of the mistakes you made and this is some of the ways you processed it publicly so that you're also teaching people, you're also teaching your staff and your team members how to process mistakes that they will also make.
This is a very interesting question. And I think who I am today is because of the numerous mistakes I've made. Because I've made so many mistakes, I can't even tell you. And this was a question that I was thinking about, that how do I make people okay in my group of schools to make mistakes? How do I make them okay? And how do I celebrate mistakes? Because I talk about it often that, we must celebrate these mistakes. These are opportunities to learn. But what is it that I can do to celebrate that? And recently, I think about 2, 3 months back, we have a WhatsApp group where all our school heads are a part of that group. And I started celebrating some of my mistakes that I've made in the past. So I would put out the mistake and I would say that this is a mistake that I made and this is how I felt and this is how it could have been. better. And I tried to do that, once every week. Put out one mistake, encourage other people to also share that. And I saw that, up in about 2 to 3 weeks' time, people started sharing their mistakes as well. Like it was not, they were not very comfortable in the first week, but the second, third week, people started sharing their mistakes as well. And this is again a continuous reminder to me as a leader is whatever we do in education, whenever we tell to do something, it will never work. But once we start showing and really role modeling stuff, that is where education works. So, yeah, I think this is a.
I mean, when you when I heard you share that, it almost brought a tear to my eye. I don't know why. I think it just to me says that you've been able to somehow in all your schools build such a safe environment.
Let me share something. So, I had actually the first thing I put out there was recently, I think 2 years back or so, I put in a very strong, narrative in my school that till grade 3 we won't have exams. And that was my first mistake that I shared in my principals group because it was a lot of resistance from some, a couple of our school leaders. And I'd given a lot of research, backed it up, and all of that. But still, parents being parents, it was very difficult to explain it to them, right? And I realized that later that that was a mistake that I made. The way we communicated would, the decision was great, but the way we communicated it, saying no exams, could have been communicated much better. Instead of saying no exams, because we actually, what we were doing was we were breaking the big exam into smaller pieces, like more formatives, right? We were doing exams in a different sort of a nature feeling, right? But we did not communicate it well.
So they thought no exam means no testing, and they
Yes.
thought no testing
There
means no
was
learning.
there was fear. There
There
was
was
fear
fear.
because we were communicating it in that way. But if we would have communicated it better, I'm sure a lot of those anxieties in that 6 months, 1 year would have been much more easier.
So I'm feeling like by the way you've demonstrated yourself and by the way you've brought vulnerability as well.
Yeah.
And when you say celebrating failures, I understand you're not you're not creating heroism out of it. What you're creating is you're trying to tell people that we are all human.
It's okay. Yeah.
We are all human and it is okay.
Yeah.
It is okay to fail, but it is important how we process that information. I'll share something which I've never shared before. I've never seen my parents actually fight all my life. I've never seen them. And for a long time, I felt like that is such, it was such a blessing. But what I'm not saying I wish they fight. I'm just saying that there is always something that you get and something that you get missed out on. What I struggled with then was I never saw a model of reconciliation.
Mhm.
I never saw if you fight with somebody, how do you then get back
Yeah.
together?
Yeah.
Because I never saw my dad go get flowers for my mom because they never had to fight.
Yeah.
So I don't think I give flowers to my wife. So the point I'm trying to make is like, what you're doing is just remarkable because
and what you just shared, Vinny, is as a human society, there's so much of learned behavior that gets, passed on. And that happens for all of us. Like, I've picked up a lot of things from my parents without even knowing. And I'm sure that I'm passing so many things to my children, like my daughter and my son. My daughter, when she was about 1 year old or so, she had gone to her nani's place, and my father-in-law, they have a beautiful house with a lot of animals, and so she was actually literally playing with rabbits. She was holding rabbits with his
Yeah.
ears, right? But as she grew up, I noticed that she's developed this fear for all sorts of animals, and it's only because of me, because that is a fear that I have.
Mm.
And I think I've passed that on to my child without even knowing.
Mm, that's amazing. So when you start thinking about a school setting, and there are so many people under you, there are teachers, principals, vice principals. I keep thinking, like, how do we get them to get aligned? Is it like creating a manual? Sometimes I think, like, who reads manuals here, right? Is it creating SOPs, or is it creating curriculums? Or, I remember, when Cambridge started bringing in their curriculum into India, and a lot of schools would be take the Cambridge curriculum, and Cambridge would say, "Oh, we are more thinking based, and also, you should have thinking based things, not rote learning." And then teachers would add these thinking questions and get kids to by heart the
Yeah,
answers,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
So sometimes,
It's so difficult.
sometimes I really like to flip some questions. Like, so this question, I would really flip it.
Mm.
What is disaligning them?
Ah.
Because our nature is, if you look at nature, everything in nature is aligned. Everything is feeding off from each other. And that's how humans are also. But what is it in the school system that is causing the disalignment? What is the inherent nature of the system that is causing the disalignment?
Which we have probably accepted as a status quo and saying, isko change mat karo.
Exactly.
Oh yeah. So I think going back to the first principles,
Yeah.
going back to checking why kids come to school, why parents send their kids to school,
Absolutely.
and then how can we work on that? Why do you think, like, parents send their kids to school, or why do you think parents should be sending their kids to school?
You
Two
want
two
like
big questions.
you want a blunt answer, then I think people want to be free for some time.
Yes.
And that's why we exist. But I was, sometime back, I recently went to this brilliant gathering of people called the Hakuba Forum in Japan. And there were people from all across the world. And that coming out of that forum, I was very intrigued by this question of, is there an exact synchronized relationship that that is there in the school of the parent and the school principal or the school management? Is there a similar relationship that exists in nature? In actual nature, in a forest, is there a similar relationship that exists? Right? Do any other mammals or any other teach their children the same way the humans teach their children? And I could not find a symbiotic relationship.
So you mean schools, the way parents look at schools and the way parents teach their kids using other adults, there is no biomimicry there. It doesn't look
The
like.
the closest that I
Was it
could
a crow and a myna or something? I think a crow, a myna leaves their kids, their eggs with crows or something. I don't know
the
if
closest that I could come up with, like we're in the age of Chat GPT, and I was playing around with that question with Chat GPT for a very long time. And the closest that I could come up to was elephants, how elephants raise their kids.
and they use the herd.
Yeah, they use the herd.
So it's like the village effect.
Correct. It's like the closest group, the mother elephants
Mm.
as a herd, and that's the closest that I could come up with. But even that is a little bit different from what the school setup is.
Mm.
So, what I've understood, because this is a
So
question
it's
that
unnatural.
unnatural, exactly
Mm.
unnatural. And I've been thinking about this question, that what in the school system is moving it away from that unnatural feeling. And I feel a lot of us as leaders have that tendency to control.
Mm.
And that tendency makes us move away from that natural phenomenon. So if there's a really, empowering figure in the school, or if there's a really, really, if there's somebody who's like control center in the school, and there's fear in the school,
Mm.
I think these are big places where the school system will move out of its natural phenomenon.
Mm. I was reading this research a couple of weeks ago, talking about what makes schools really work, and what are the key differences between schools. And they were trying to find out whether it is the infrastructure, whether the learning environment, what has a maximum impact on child's learning. And one of the things that they found out that had the maximum impact over a child's learning is if a team of teachers have a shared vision, a shared value system, a shared understanding, and a shared idea of what the goal is, but a team of teachers, then that has the maximum impact on a child's academic this thing. So it's almost like working like a pack of wolves.
Exactly, like those mother elephants, right? Everybody is just reinforcing the same thing from different angles.
Yeah. So that idea of what is important for that child is the child gets a consistent message across the school. So I'm wondering, like in a school, how do we set that? How do we do that? Because one thing is for sure, some of the mistakes that I've made, I think that's looking like the theme of today's conversation, is I used to think when I was very new, in my own school, that I should, um, the carrot and stick effect with a teacher, with teachers or staff or anyone, that, oh, if you do something well, then you get rewarded. If you don't do well, you get a stick, or you get a memo, and there are all these systems, 3 memos, one, all these things. And uh, you never accept a mistake, because if you accept a mistake, I have to give you a memo. So almost the system is making you almost lie, right? Or every time I ask you how are you, you have to say fine. You have to say you have to say great, right? So but then I had a British school leader with us for a long time, and what she told me is, no, people respond better to safety. And I was like, how is that possible? How is that possible if the people respond better to safety? If I give them safety, wouldn't they then become immediately incomplacent? Or they feel like, oh, I don't need to do anything. And for a long time, for probably the first 10 years of my school leading life, I did not even know or even had heard of the word accountability. Accountability. So then when I heard about accountability, I'm like, wait, how do I make people safe, give them the feeling of safety, yet hold them accountable? And that's when you start realizing that, okay, I may have gone to B school and I may have gone to management school and I may have, but we're not taught all this.
Yeah, true.
We're just not taught all this. So how does one learn these things? What are your thoughts around this? Not really a question, but do you have any thoughts around this?
I think for me, Willie, I've always, from the time I've really started working on myself as a leader, I think I've seen a lot of change in my school system there. And while I really enjoy going to a lot of professional development programs, but I think what really worked for me is reading some interesting books. And while I'm reading it, applying it parallelly. A lot of people feel, I've spoken to a lot of people and they say that, Siddharth, finish it and then apply. That doesn't work for me.
Uh,
If I finish it, I won't apply anything. Because
हो गया.
हो गया, khatam. But if I'm reading it, like I'll read page by page and I'll start applying. I'll make mistakes in that journey. But at least it will transfer.
It's got to be like a recipe book.
Yeah. It will transfer. But if I don't apply parallelly, it's there and then it'll pass out also somewhere. I think that has been my biggest takeaway. And I'm okay to making those mistakes, applying it piecemeal also. It might, my teachers might not be okay with it, but I've come to terms because at least some movement happens with that.
Yeah. One of the things that my principal once told me was, sir, really, wait. We need some time. You keep reading these books, going for all these seminars. You get workshopped over the weekend and then you come on Monday and you say, abhi ye karna hai. So that is one key learning for me, that I need to give some time to my team, because a lot of people are certainly not, all people are not alike in terms of psychologically and their orientation and things like that. Some people like speed, some people want more steadiness, and some people need more stability and things like that. And I have noticed teachers to be people who really want and value stability a lot more than too much change. And sometimes, sometimes my mom used to tell me, look, Willie, if you get so many ideas, then in Malayalam they say Stirubuddhi. It doesn't look like you're fixed with related to something. So then I'm like, no, but innovation is a thing, being dynamic is a thing. We should be able to change our ideas, and over time, I noticed that every time I came up with a new idea, my team said, "Let me just wait it out for 2 weeks. Then this too shall pass."
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you experienced anything like that?
Absolutely. I think I've been on the same boat, Willie, and my coach taught me something. He shared with me that Siddharth, don't work in your school, work on your school.
What is the difference?
So
I
don't
want to
work.
know.
So what he said that, you're not the person who is taking care of the day-to-day things. You've got to work on the school. You've got to, work at the periphery of the school, not inside the school. And this shifted for me is I would go to a lot of conferences, have a lot of ideas, read a lot of stuff, have a lot of ideas, and always struggle. There would always be that tension, right? Slowly, we've shifted that. While I go to those conferences, but I get my team to also experience a lot of that stuff. Now I am not coming with all the ideas. They are coming with the ideas.
Mm.
And because they are coming with the ideas, there's more ownership of implementing those ideas.
Mm.
This was one big thing
That's a huge
that
shift,
shifted for
actually.
me. Yeah.
That's a
That
huge
was
shift.
one
I
big
can.
because I'm not better. This is something that I have to realize. I'm not better than the person sitting next to me, who could be a teacher, who could be, a principal of the school. I'm not better than them. It is just that I have more exposure. That is why I'm coming up. If
Mm.
they have the same exposure, they will come up with probably 10 better ideas than me.
Mm.
That is something.
Exposure is really key, right? It's really key because I'm reminded of this beautiful story. There was a school in Africa, and they were trying to teach their kids a little bit of essay writing.
Yeah.
And in second standard, nobody could write anything, like not even 3 words, three, 4 lines about it.
Yeah.
And so they called a reading expert and writing expert, and they said, "Can you change this thing in them?" And just a week later, kids are writing long stories.
Mm.
And people called her and said, "What did you do? Like, how did you teach writing in a week?" She's like, "Oh, no, nothing. I just took them to the park, the garden, the safari, the village, the forest. And now they have things to write about." So I think we start thinking that people don't have ideas because they're not smart.
Yeah.
I think we start thinking what we're actually thinking is we are smarter, right? But then when we start realizing that exposure just unlocks so many ideas in people.
Absolutely. Just visiting, meeting new people, getting, just changing the setting. Like of late I'm using every day. Every day when when I brush, I'm using my left hand to brush.
Oh,
And it is just to change that pattern.
is that why you have sparkling white teeth now?
Just to change, I think we all need to change patterns,
Mm,
try something different, try something new, because learning is when you can bring something from one context to another context.
mm,
And as a school leader, I'm also always trying to do this. Like I would go and talk to somebody from the tech industry and try and see how I can bring it to school. I'll go and talk to somebody from the manufacturing industry and try and see what best practice can I bring from there in the school.
mm,
Because as an organization, we are an organization there as well as here.
mm. That's I think key learning.
Yeah.
I think principals should probably not just look at other principals,
Yeah.
but should also look at other managers, other industries. How are other people handling it?
Yeah, because when we are thinking of new situation solutions in our setup
Mm,
as a school, we always limit ourselves because we know अच्छा this ये तो होने वाला नहीं है, this will not happen
mm,
because this is a problem and this is a problem, this is a problem. But if we look at a new industry
mm,
and we say, okay, is it this industry where this is happening, how can we bring that to the school?
mm,
I think that's a big big game changer for me because
mm.
this is how I operate a lot of times when I'm thinking.
And like when you actually break things down, like a school runs 100 different buses. It's like a small transport company, right?
Yeah.
There's so much you can learn from a transport company, or just so much you can learn from an administration company in terms of the way they control expenses and the way they control things like that. So I think these are incredibly simple
And,
ways to learn.
and like there's so much that we've learned from a lot of your sharings because I'm such a big fan of your work and how you run such a brilliant model and at such a cost effective model, and the work that you are doing there, there's so much, so how do we break, not just look at similar spaces but across the spectrum, and that I think is more learning.
Thank you for sharing that. That's that really encourages me as well. And I think everyone needs to take this responsibility of being able to share, right? Because so, what do you think about competition in schools? Because almost every day you see new schools coming up, and do you have any ideas around that? Like one of the ideas that I have around competition of schools is I feel like every parent deserves a great school. Every student deserves a great school. um, and I'm now thinking that every school, I'll give you an example. Let's say there's a school in Dehradun, and if everyone's saying that's the number one school, the number one school, right? Now, if I live in Pune, I can't send my kid there.
Correct.
Does that mean my kid is going to be devoid of that experience of being in a great school? No, the child should. Now, imagine if a school in Pune learns from the school in Dehradun, and even if they have to copy, there's nothing wrong in that, right? Even if they have to copy that, copy exactly the same thing from there, bring it down to Pune or Nashik or Mumbai or any other place that we're talking about, and we're able to give the people in that local community access to that kind of education. I think that is brilliant.
Absolutely.
What do you think about that? Like, I've met a lot of principals like I don't like to copy or I don't like to share because I don't want others to copy. And this need for everyone to bring differentiation um, might exclude so many beautiful models. Is what I'm thinking. Any
think,
thoughts around these?
As a teacher, no, whenever we become like we start feeling that we know it all, that's when the decline starts, right? The moment you are a learner and you're constantly learning, and the best way for me for doing teachers professional development is actually to send them to a very interesting school and just immerse themselves one day in that school. There cannot be a better professional development. You would do so many lectures or a master class or this or that, but experiencing a school firsthand and learning from there cannot be compared, because there's so much show there, right? You're seeing what needs to be done. Nobody's telling you that do this active learning strategy in the classroom, or do this, or use technology this way. Nobody's telling you. You're actually seeing firsthand, because when you see firsthand those smaller pieces which are unsaid, they get uncovered. And that is where all the beauty of execution lies, the smaller things, not in the bigger things.
This is powerful because I was reading this research about how schools are changed and how do you improve schools. There was one system called the hub and spoke system, which was done earlier. And they would say in every let's say city or in every town or something like that, create this one model school. Even there are these schools of excellence, model schools, all these things. And now it is proven that that model is a failure. The reason is because there is so much money, time, and capital, human capital, intellectual capital, social capital, everything goes into making that one school work and that one school do incredibly well, that all the other schools in that area say, अरे वहां पे तो चलेगा because इतना सारा investment है, इतना सारा है, सब लोग मेहनत कर रहा तो चलेगा ही ना. And literally none of the other schools develop. So what they now figured out is to have a cluster school kind of method, whereby you have a group of schools. Like you're a cluster yourself actually, because you have these 4 or 5 schools, right? So it's like a cluster. Rather than creating one of these schools as a shining lighthouse example, if if you have 4 schools and if one of it grows by 90% and others are where they are, wouldn't it be better to have all schools grow by 10-15% rather than one? So Elihu Goldratt, who wrote this lovely book called The Goal, and there's something called a theory of constraint. He was saying, are you willing to sacrifice local efficiency for global systemic throughput? And I think Peter Senge also talks a little bit about that system thinking approach. Right? So when I think about things like these, I start I start seeing what you're saying, no? That incremental change, many people thinking like us or thinking like how you're thinking. Any some of the experiments you have shared with me in the past in various events that you're doing in your school, they are lovely. Would you like to share some of these things? I think you did something with kids. You were talking about some remedial program. You were talking about some mentoring program. You were talking about so many of these things.
So one very interesting thing that we did, and I've been coached by Dr. Sri Kumar Rao, and he is like one of the highest authorities in happiness. And he talks about something called as mental chatter. And my questions, like my learnings from him, whatever I'm learning, like as an individual, I try and learn things from various domains. My agenda is to try and bring that to the school, to the kids in some form. So when I've started learning about mental chatter, understanding my own mental chatter, and I felt that was so liberating. So we tried and worked on a program, which is about a 10-12 session program, and we, uh, brought that to grade 10 kids. And the children started understanding themselves. They started understanding their thoughts. They started understanding how their thoughts define their behavior in the outside world. And when I went back and, like when we'd finished about 7-8 sessions with them, and I went back and I discussed with them, many of them developed that habit of journaling, noting their thoughts down on a day to day. And they said that it was so liberating because it was always in here. We could not talk to anybody about it because, what would people say? What would my friends say? Because a lot of the time when you're in grade 10th, there are a lot of issues about girls and boys, those things, where there's feelings involved, there's a lot of emotion involved, there's a lot of
Hormones.
adolescence, a lot of that. And children don't feel comfortable sharing that with anyone, not even their parents, because parents become preachy, teachers again become very judgmental. uh, Very rarely we find like really high quality counselors who can handle such stuff in the best way for children. Peers sometimes make take benefit of those secrets that others share, so I felt that. And in my conversations with students, I understood that that is something that is helping them, just understand their thoughts and how their thoughts are defining their behavior outside. And this is so powerful because if I'm able to slowly become aware of all the negative chatter, because at that age, when I'm working with a lot of these kids, I notice that their thoughts are pulling them down. Their thoughts ke andar mein, there's so much negative talk which says, no, I can't do this. No, this is not possible. No, I'm not good enough. These are those strains of thought that most of the most of these children in grade 10th, 8th, ninth have. And how do we as a school empower them in their thoughts? Because the moment they start doing it, and once they start becoming aware, it's like, in a room full of darkness, if you put on the light, the darkness has to go away. Similarly, when you start becoming aware of your thoughts, all of these negative chatter will automatically go away. You don't, like, the darkness goes away automatically, the negative chatter starts going away automatically because you start becoming aware.
This is so powerful because ninth and 10th is where parents and everyone else says ये सब छोड़ दो खाली ध्यान मत दो ये से सिर्फ एग्जाम पे ध्यान दो.
Correct. But ye jo hai, this is defining the exams, no? Because if I'm constantly thinking, am I good enough? Will I score enough? Will I do this? Then how can I study for 2 hours? Because this is what's playing in my mind.
And immediately after the 10th, you go to 11th and 12th, no one cares. Suddenly the classroom from 30 becomes 120. Suddenly they don't care about your this thing, which actually now tells me at that vulnerable, sensitive period, there's almost nobody incentivized to help the child with his mental state.
Yeah. So we also started doing.
That's why it's so powerful, I
Yeah.
think, what you're doing. And one thing I want to say, you don't have to do it. The board doesn't tell you to do it. The department doesn't tell you to do it. Parents also don't tell you to do it. Parents will come and say, "Sir, or
You
test
karo.
do, or ye karo." And parents may think that these are distractions.
Correct. Correct.
But the fact that you have had a personal experience and you had a personal breakthrough,
Yeah.
and you're trying to bring that to parents, going above and beyond what parents even want. Because, in the Indian business situation, they say, "Arey, customer is king, usko jo chahiye wahi de do." But most of us know that as educators, the educator knows what's more important
Absolutely.
and when,
Yeah.
rather than
Yeah, you wouldn't go to a doctor, no, who will give the same medicine that you want. You will one time you'll go, but you won't go to a doctor because so and we also started doing this, we started giving this out as a course as well, to people who wanted to take this up, because so many teenagers, they struggle in that phase where there's so much of negative talk in their mind, because everybody is telling them, no, ki, you can't do this, you can't do this. Ghar pe bhi they're saying, teachers are also saying, at school, and there's peer pressure. So we worked on a program where we started life coaching for teenagers. So
Hmm.
this was because for me, I had a fantastic journey with Dr. Rao, with the way he really shifted the way I was thinking, and my mental frameworks, my thinking frameworks. He really shifted that in about 2.5 years.
Hmm.
So the question that I was asking myself is, how can I pass this on to my children? And under our company, Equanimity Learning, we started this life coaching for teenagers. And it is so path breaking, because I remember when I was in grade seventh, I was in a boarding school, and I was bullied big time. But I never knew that I was bullied, right? But those things never allowed me to speak up, never allowed me to show my full self to an audience or in life generally. And later, when I actually went in through my Vipassana experiences, that really allowed me to open up. That really allowed me to feel confident about myself. So, if these kids can feel so much more confidence and so much more, clarity in thoughts at that age, I think life coaching for teenagers is something that every young child who's struggling, because it's showing in their marks. But what's the root cause? The root cause is their thoughts. Like that iceberg, ऊपर में marks दिखता है, but problem जो है ना वो नीचे है. We need to figure that out.
I mean, for one thing, I just want to say, like, for you being at the helm of this institution all across, Nashik and Nagpur and Varanasi and Pune, it is so encouraging, and it just brings in such a great feeling, because parents may secretly want their, they publicly they may want their kids to go to a school that helps them get good marks, but secretly they are hoping that the school takes on all these things that you're talking about, that really coaches and helps build their character, and allows them to navigate those very difficult times. Because I know adolescence years, you either survive or you don't. You certainly walk out alive, but it just completely makes you. And i'm i'm,
It's a
I'm
very difficult time,
I'm in
very
yeah.
difficult time, and I've
And it's not
experienced.
just having a counselor in school.
Yeah,
That is not the way to do it.
it will not solve it.
Yeah.
Will not solve it, because there's so many hidden things which you can't even talk about, right? As a teenager.
Yeah. So since you spoke about Vipassana, I know you're a very ardent follower of it, and you've gone over 7 or 8 times. So what do you think, uh, with respect to this, the silence and the looking inward through Vipassana? How has that? What have you heard from your school or about your school through that silence? Is there anything that comes to mind like that?
I think when I go there, I detach myself.
Mhm.
I am, and through that, I think through that silence, one thing I've learned, that my role in life is to work on myself. And whatever, God has given around me, like my family, the work that I have, all of those are instruments to work on myself. But my final goal is to work on myself. That if I can do that well, everything else will automatically take care of itself.
And when you talk about equanimity learning and this thing about coaching teenagers, is that something that's open and accessible to
Yeah, absolutely.
anybody from any school?
Anybody, any school, and we do a lot of work. So, what made us start equanimity learning was we were doing some fantastic, and we're still doing some fantastic work in our campuses. And we felt that it is our responsibility because our teams have put in so much of man hours, so much effort to really work on themselves, to really grow themselves as individuals. It is our responsibility to, grow work, to expand our work, because that is how we can give them more fulfillment as well. And so we do multiple things under equanimity. The life coaching for teenagers is one of them. We work with multiple schools as well.
So if you're a school owner anywhere in India, they can feel free to get in touch with you.
Absolutely.
And you'd come and share, and you could do workshops, or you could do coaching and things like that. So that's really, really good. And do you also open your campuses for people who would like to come visit?
Absolutely. So recently we had a school visit us. Like I said, in education, I feel show is something that really works and telling doesn't work. And this is something that I've learned from Kiran from the Riverside School. So yeah, I think
incredible. Now, just I want to ask one tiny question. What do you see as that's also something that I'm kind of figuring out right now. What do you think is a good principle to have? There are a lot of teachers and supervisors who are trying to become principals, and maybe they're trying to figure out, like, what does, like, a chairman or a director, or look for a principal, or what could be personality traits or characteristics that good principals could have in a school. Is there anything that comes to your mind? What would you be looking for?
so. I'm generally,
And has it changed over time also? Because I know
yes,
that earlier I used to look for certain characteristics, and certainly now I don't look like that. It has changed.
It has. Like earlier, I would look for a lot of experience. I would look for, I would look for a lot of things like experience, the years in that principal position.
Yeah.
Now I don't do that. What I look for is how many mistakes you've made. How have you learned from those mistakes? Are you comfortable sharing those mistakes? I think, and if there's that, if there's that nature of control, or if there's that nature of empowerment, these are some things that these are my big things for a school leader.
So,
and something that I've really gotten to change in some of my campuses is that we request the principal not to sit in a room.
okay.
So the principal sits outside the room, in like maybe the center of the school somewhere.
Wow.
So for a very long time, when I was at DPS Nashik, I would sit right at the center of the school, and I felt that that was such an interesting thing, because from just sitting there, I'm without doing anything. I'm meeting kids, I'm meeting teachers, I'm having those small conversations, the high fives, and all of that. There's so much relationship just because of sitting there.
Wow. That is incredible. You see, I follow this one principal in the US on Instagram, and I'll give you his ID. It doesn't come to mind right now, but have you been to a hospital?
Yeah.
Have you seen, in a hospital, most of all the furniture has wheels on it?
Yeah.
And have you seen like a side trolley where they put medicines, and there's one or two? So this principal bought one of that in his school.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like a trolley. It looks like a podium, but not that big. It's a trolley, and it's got wheels. It's got one or two drawers on it. He puts his laptop on it, He's got his walkie-talkie stuck there. You know,
And he walks around. I
he
think I've
walk.
seen this. I
Yeah,
think I've seen.
he literally walks around, and I think he flies around. He runs across the say. He's high-fiving kids. He's high-fiving teachers. He's standing there. You know, when kids are walking in and things like that. I think relationship, right?
Yeah.
It's
Because, I know a lot of people and a lot of senior teachers want to become principal. But what is that drive to becoming that principal is the power. And I think that's a real bad principle to have.
mm, that office, that chair,
Yeah.
that power, that oh yeah. So I think what you're saying might just open up uh, the idea to so many teachers that just being a great human being, just wanting really well for their kids, working towards that, not afraid of being showing up as who you are as a whole human, right? I mean, that is all that you need. And so many times that I think principals, as you said, may just think that it's about the power and it's about these other social constructs.
I would not just say principals because, it comes from the school management.
Okay.
What drives that power for the school principal is from the school management. And the school management is looking for things like that. The school management is always asking the principal for even the smallest thing. So the principal has to be controlling
Mm.
because if this was not done, if this notebook was not corrected, they'll hold the collar for the school principal.
Mm.
Principal has to control. So if a school is not working, it is the school management.
Mhm. So you're a second generation school leader. Have you because your parents started the first school? Of course, you started a couple of schools after that on your own. But is there anything that comes to your mind that at other second generation school owners or children of present school owners should be aware of? I'm a second generation school owner, school leader, school owner too, because my mom started a preschool
Yeah.
and they ran it for from 91 all the way to 2003, and then I started the first standard onwards. um and it's remarkably different, actually, the way I looking at my school and the way my parents looked at my school.
Yeah.
Is it also the same with you?
Absolutely the same. Yeah, absolutely the same. I think it's very, very different how my parents looked at it and how me and my brother we look at it. Absolutely different. And I think one thing which has really changed how I look at it is I pursued my master's in education. I do a lot of reading of education, and I think for like you said, and I see that for you as well. You're so much invested in the school. You're constantly reading. You're constantly going to seminars, programs where there's discussion on education and stuff like that. I think that is very important if you're leading a school, whether you're a first generation, second generation school management, working on yourself, knowing the best in education, reading about education. Without that, you're doing disservice to the kids.
So what I'm getting from you is you took a school and you also started a couple of schools, which means A, you know how to transform a school. If there's an existing legacy school, you know how to transform it clearly. And you also know how to do greenfield clearly,
Yes.
right? Is that also something that you'd be able to do for other people? If there is, if there's a couple who have a school, maybe their kids are not interested, or maybe their kids want to continue the school, but don't want to work in the school and they want someone working on the school. Is that something that you're open to doing, or would you like to share
I'm
more?
I'm generally happy to help, but I've also seen that whenever somebody else's school and they give it out, it's always a trust deficit, right? So I'm very conscious how do we deal with that. But I'm generally the way we deal with equanimity is we do a few programs and we try and understand each other. And I'm not keen to do 2000 schools, 100 schools. I'm happy with what I'm doing. But what we're doing with equanimity is to try and share our learnings in the best possible way with a larger group. That is our sole goal with equanimity. The reason why we named this equanimity because it's a very complicated name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
equanimity. Equanimity.
Yeah, because the purpose of life is to be equanimous,
Mm.
right? As per Buddha, the purpose of life, whether good happens, bad happens, you have to be equanimous.
Mm.
And that's the purpose of education.
But I would recommend school owners and school leaders across India to get in touch with you and probably start off a couple of workshops with your team, because you do some incredible workshops, and you're a very powerful and influential person yourself with a lot of experience, and you'll definitely be able to go set a lot of things in order, and and that would be a great way for you to start. So yeah, but what a great, fabulous conversation I had today. Thank you so much for spending the time inviting us to Varanasi and really just having a heartfelt, warm conversation. Any closing comments or anything that you'd like to share with anyone who might be listening?
I think for every school leader, the only and only role is keep learning.
Yeah.
If you are learning, your school is learning.
Mm. Powerful. Absolutely powerful. So if you ever think as a school leader, you've made it, the journey is done. No, it's just the beginning.
Yeah,
I think you have a chief learner here. All of us need to go back and think about how we can be the chief learner in our organization. But thank you, Siddharth. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Willie, for doing this. Absolutely a pleasure and always learning from you.